Welcome to this triumph that doesn't really have a name. I don't have a name for it because I keep changing parts of this effect over the years. So even up until like a few days ago, this looked a little bit different. So it's just a free-flowing triumph. I'll get to the important part. The important part about this is that, well, no, this is not the important part. This triumph fools magicians, or 95, 99% magicians that I show it to are fooled by this triumph. But that doesn't really matter because this is a triumph that is intended to be performed on laymen. And like with most of the stuff that I create, it came from a place of apathy, where the average triumph these days is mostly use the same methods where half the deck is turned face up, face down beforehand. The deck is turned and farrowed into the deck, what they believe is face down, but really it's only a few cards face down, and then you can show that, which I don't like that because you can't actually have this real display of showing all the cards and spread through and show that they're actually mixed. So I wanted to get rid of that. I didn't want to do a slop shuffle and where they again weren't actually mixed face up and down. And I also wanted a part where the spectators, the participants even, can riffle shuffle the deck. So with this triumph, my intention was to actually shuffle the cards face up into face down in a way that I can show the cards freely, and with no sneaky moves, have the deck write itself except for the selected card. And that includes allowing the audience to be able to riffle shuffle the deck. So you're going to see a performance, then I'm going to explain to you some stuff to do with the effect, about mainly why certain elements of this method are in place and why I like them so much, and then I'm going to teach you how to do it. The deck can be borrowed and shuffled. Any card can now be selected by the participant. So let's say they select maybe this card right here. Remember this card at home as we lose it into the deck. In fact, we'll give it a shuffle. So shuffle, 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 shuffle. And to make my life a little bit more difficult, we'll mix them in a strange way. We'll take some cards face down, some face up, some face down. And I'm going to continue mixing like this all the way through the deck until there are no cards left to mix. So maybe some face up, some face down, some face up, some face down, some face up, and some face down. Okay? For any of you astute magicians watching out there, you may call me fairly sloppy, but I can prove to you this deck really is mixed. And I'll make my job a little bit more difficult by giving them an even more thorough shuffle. And of course, my favorite part with this routine is allowing the audience to genuinely riffle shuffle these cards to the extent where I can actually spread and show you that the cards are truly mixed out of order. In fact, I'll even hand some of these cards to the participants to hold and feel. And now I'm going to issue them a challenge, which is to take these cards and unmix them so that they all face the correct orientation, but without turning the cards over. They get 5 seconds starting now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And of course, they cannot do it. That's because it's impossible. The only way to correct these cards is to turn them over. Like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is one other way, and that is to use magic. You've seen that all the cards were mixed face up into face down genuinely. They were shuffled not just by me, but also by you. And you've seen how difficult it was just to turn a handful of cards the right orientation. We'll watch. Now every single card in the deck is the right way. Every single card except for one. Every single card in the entire deck. For the first time, they can name their card out loud. And their card is the 10 of diamonds. And everything can be fully examined. Okay, so you just seen the method. Maybe you're fooled, maybe you're not, maybe you're unsure. The cool thing is that, like, we're magicians. We are hyper aware of most things that are going on in terms of technique and methods that exist. So if you're not even sure, or if you're like, I spotted it, then just think how like absolutely dumbfounded the audience are. And the important thing about this is that it's not structured to be like a boring magician fooling trick. There's so many card tricks that are impressive to us. Like even down to any card, any numbers, they are most of the time designed to like fool our peers, and you find when you perform them, they're really, really boring. And this actually started off in a really boring presentation of it. So let me explain to you what's going on a little bit, and then we'll go into the method. And what I'll do is I'll just tell you the core elements to the beats of the method, because I'm going to go over the most part of it now. So I come up with the idea of this back in a bit before 2017, but it was when I was chatting to my friend Joe Barry at the Session Convention 2017 that I said, man, have you seen anything like this before? And he like sort of scratched his head. He's like, I think there's something in Marlowe about like the core principle, but not this effect. And that's not the way I had it structured. So sure enough, I dug out Marlowe, and I found that the principle, the main core principle at play here was transcribed by Marlowe. But everything around it that takes it away from the core principle is what like the routine is. And I've seen one or two other magicians dabble with this, but mostly all of the versions that I've seen all the versions I've seen, it's more of a skill-based demonstration, or completely forget that the spectator are part of it, in terms of like, it feels like it feels like they're not thought through, as in, if you would just really perform this, how would it look? So this is the core difference between anything written in print, or synth that I can find. So I'll tell you the method. The basic core method is, if you haven't sussed it, is that I'm 2 pharaohs away from getting the deck into a half and half self-righted face up, face down situation. A better way to describe it is, if you didn't know, you're about to know that if you take a deck in brand new order and you pharaoh it perfectly 8 times, that deck will go completely back into new deck order. I'm not sure how many of us know that. It's quite a common thing. So what I did is I figured out the best amount of pharaohs away to look convincing but not be boring for the deck to be in a triumph position, in that I could just do a pharaoh or a riffle shuffle or 2 and get the deck back into orientation. It turns out 2 is the place where it can look realistic and not be too boring to perform, which is such a crucial part of it. So what you see is me do 1 pharaoh shuffle, and then I hand the deck to the audience, which is the best part of the entire effect, and I'll just cover it quickly. So essentially what I'm doing is, after I get their card to the 4th position, I'm doing what looks like a slop shuffle, which is like a fake shuffle into face up and face down, but I'm actually shuffling them face up into face down, or at least mixing them. I say shuffle loosely, because once their card is in the middle of 7 face down cards, I then place 6 cards face up above them, and I continue a pattern like this. So basically the full pattern is 7 6 7 6 6 7 6 7. So that's 7 face down cards, 6 face up, 7 face down, 6 face up. Then it reverses. 6 face down, 7 face up, 6 face down, 7 face up. Sounds super duper complicated, and the reality is that it's not very hard. And I've got to the point now where, like, if you notice, I was performing and just talking really normally. It's because you can kind of just gauge it. You don't have to always be exact with those details. And there's a really beautiful element which cleans all of that up, which I think makes this feel so fooling. So you get into that 7 face down, 6 face up, repeating all the way through, and then you obviously reverse at the halfway point, and you can dribble and show they're all mixed. You can spread through and show they're all mixed. That deck is completely mixed. It's beautiful. For me, I think it's a really beautiful moment, because you are exactly you are telling the truth. So then you cut the halfway point, which is really easy, because the deck, as long as it's been broken in a little bit, will naturally cut at a halfway point because of the bowing in the cards. You give them 1 pharaoh, and again, you can still quickly dribble through and flash through that they look fairly mixed. Of course, they're not as mixed well now. They're more in blocks, 4 blocks of face up, face down, face up, face down. And then I cut at the halfway point and hand it to the audience. So I cut for them, just so they know it's bang on. And they riffle shuffle. And you're going to pray, you're going to hope that they get it not perfect. because you want them to have a few cards mixed face up and face down in the middle. Because think about this from not a magician's point of view, but from a real person's point of view. They've seen the deck mixed face up to face down legit. They've seen you mix them even more. And if they thought that anything suspicious had happened, you then say you mix. And they riffle shuffle. Immediately you spread to the center of the deck and you can show more cards. You can show the cards are mixed like that because they've just done it. Unless the deck is actually mixed face to face down, it's very, very hard to find a better convincer than in their own hands that happening. So that happens. And the best part is really the deck's in this position at this point. You've got half face down, half face up, and some genuinely mixed cards in the deck. The rest are all the right orientation. So the beautiful thing that I found now is that I say, look, go ahead and try this. I just spread to the middle, take a few out. Now, normally I take these out, or have one set of participants take the cards out, and I immediately just hand the rest of the deck to somebody else. So I'm not involved. There's no way I can be manipulating it. But in the video, it's just me, right? And I say some guys, I'm like, I want you to, you can either time them by saying 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I say, what I want you to try and do is just try and turn these, or how fast can you turn them right? Or just anything to sort of demonstrate to them how finicky and tricky it genuinely is to turn a few cards the same orientation. And that's the coolest part in the whole thing for me, is that they've now corrected the orientation of these cards. I drop them on top, and now everything except for the selected card is the right way around. The deck is completely magically fixed, and it's baffling. It's completely baffling. Most magicians I show this to don't know how it works. The ones that do are always unsure about the part in the middle, where it's like, well, I riffle shuffled them and they were still mixed in the middle. And these are the bits that when I was creating it, it was all for the spectators, because there's so many triumphs that are just done exactly the same way or use the same core methods, and this is completely gimmickless. And you genuinely mix a deck face up into face down. You shuffle it to make it even worse. They shuffle it. They see it. They feel those cards are mixed, and then it completely writes itself. And for me, the method is kind of magic in itself. Like, obviously we understand the mathematical principles of it, but it's quite magic in itself. And that's what I like. I like my magic to be impressive, like feel like real magic to me. And if I experience it, because it's so impressive when it works, then surely like the audience are as well. So that's like my overview of the method. I hope you can understand why I think this is such a beautiful routine and such a beautiful piece. And I hope you guys can go off and learn it. And if you have any questions, then just let me know. But here is me teaching you the exact like mechanics and the beats of the routine, so you can just start practicing. Begin by having a card selected. But what I like to do is, as I'm going through the cards and splitting the deck for a card to be taken out, I'm secretly obtaining 3 cards separately from these cards. And the way I do that is to move my index finger off these 3 cards. So I have just 3 cards sort of loose. That way, when a card is placed back in this case the 4 of hearts, I can drop 3 cards naturally on top of it and obtain a break. So now I can pick up at that break and shuffle the top stock to the bottom, now placing their card 4th from the top. You can do this in other ways as well. You could have a card selected. You could get a break under the top 3 cards and execute a Marlowe tilt, placing the card 4 down. Whatever way you like, you can do it. But let's just say the selected card in this case is the 4 of clubs. It's 4th from the top. Now you're going to remember this: 7, 6, 7, 6, 7, 6, 7. And what that means is that I start, but it looks like I'm doing a slop shuffle. But really, I take 3 cards, I then take the selection, and I place that underneath these cards. Notice how I do this. I push 3 cards over, I turn my hand upside down, and place that card on the bottom of this spread, turn everything back over, and I try and keep this square so that they don't see their card immediately. I then place 3 cards underneath. This gives me a packet of 7 cards with their card in the middle. Now I'm going to place 6 cards on the bottom face down. 7, 6, 7, 6, 6, 7, 6, 7. So 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And actually, this is a lot easier to do than you imagine. You can just sort of count and even estimate once you get to grips with this effect. Now I turn back over and I push 7 cards on the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The best tip I can give is to do this in chunks of 4 and 3. Okay? Now I do 6 cards. So when I get to 6, I go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now I do 6 again, but this time it's not 7, so it's not altered. It doesn't go 7, 6, 7, 6, 7, 6, 7, 6. It goes 7, 6, 7, 6, 6, 7, 6, 7. So now I do 6, the alternate direction. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Again, I go 7 this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I do 6. And lastly, I don't need to count because I know there's 7 there, and I just place them on the bottom. This sounds really complicated, but it's not. It's very, very easy. Just takes a little bit of practice. But what you're left with is this real display and this real situation of the cards mixed. Face up into face down. You can spread through. You can dribble through. The spectators can actually see, for once, a deck is really triumphed. The beautiful thing is, without any culling, you're about to... This kind of feels like magic, so let me just show you. Naturally, there'll be a break at the halfway point because of the way the cards bow, as long as you don't use a brand new fresh deck, but even still, there'll be a natural break at the halfway point. Break at the halfway point, and do your best to execute a fairly accurate faro shuffle. But don't worry if you can't do it. You can always get away with missing a few. But you're going to execute a fairly even faro shuffle, right? So when you push this in, this deck is now beginning to write itself. Again, you're going to pick up at the break, and there'll be a natural break at the halfway point because of the orientation of the cards. And you're going to allow a spectator to riffle shuffle. And you're going to hope, you're going to pray that they get a few mixed in the middle, they get a few wrong in the middle, because that is going to be your convincer. And that's the difference between this handling and any other handling really out there. So they can shuffle, and you pray they mix a few up for real in the middle. Because now this deck, for all intents and purposes, is unshuffled at the top, unshuffled at the bottom, with their card face up. But you spread through straight to the middle, and you'll feel that clump of cards in the middle. And look at that, that looks realistic. The reality is, aside from these center cards, all of these are the right orientation, apart from this selection, and all of these are too. So you spread to the center to display how real that looks, right? That's so convincing because it's real, they're mixed. Then any cards that are genuinely mixed, I hand these to the audience. If there was somebody there, it's easier to do the next part because they can take hold of these and you just put this half on top. But since we were on camera, I just out-jogged these cards. I turned this half of the deck up and I can take them out. Now, the audience are going to clean up for you. This is the beautiful part of the trick. The convincer that they've seen the cards being mixed under the guise of making you, whatever patter you want to say, like, try to unmix them in 5 seconds. Or you can just say, look, take these cards and see how long it takes you just to unmix them. Whatever happens, the main thing is you want to place this part of the deck in their hand. So it's really much better with the participants here. But, look at that. They think this is a fully mixed deck. They've seen it. They've shuffled it themselves. You've shown the entire deck mixed. They have a tiny handful. They can do the cleanup for you under the guise of them experiencing how difficult it would be to do the entire deck. And now, these go back on. I recommend spreading face up because the reveal comes at the end as a final kicker, as opposed to being like, oh, there's your card, and the cards are facing the right direction. You can spread every single card slowly in the deck. Boom, one card face down. There's the mystery. There's the anticipation. Every single card is completely the correct orientation now, except for theirs. And that feels like real magic because you genuinely have mixed a deck face up into face down. You've shuffled them, the audience has shuffled them, and they've completely righted themselves. And the beautiful part is the spectator corrects the deck for you and does not even realize. So I hope you guys all enjoyed that. I'll just say that like I've been jamming with Christian Grace, and he has some fantastic ideas on this. One of them is to, well, the original way I would do this is I would deal the cards on the table, and I would say like, okay, very quietly, I want you to concentrate. Their card would be 4th, and I'd say I'm going to deal some cards face up. I'll do 3 face up. I say I'll deal some cards face down. I'll deal their one face down. I'd say some face up, and I deal 3 face up, and then I'd say some face down. I drop 6 face down, 7 face up, and I would do this in like chunks of 3s and 4s all the way through. And I'd say at the end, I'm going to ask you one question. So everyone pay close attention. So I go through the whole thing. Some face up, some face down, some face up, some face down. At the very end, I would say one question. Did you see your card? And they say no. I say, well, that gives me more information than you realize, because now I know, because some are face up and face down, that's eliminated half the cards. So let's even out the odds again. Let me give them a shuffle. So I riffle shuffle them. And I say, do you know what? In fact, maybe you think I did something tricky. You shuffle them. And they would shuffle them. And then I've been basically, apart from the centre few that I pray were mixed, because sometimes it ends up being too perfect, the trick is ready to be completed. The issue that I had with it was that it was way too boring. Way too boring. Doing it in the hands meant it could be walk around, didn't need a table, and it was much faster. So I eliminated the sit down part. Anyway, Jam with Christian Grace, I'm not even going to tell his ideas, because he may develop it into something completely different, but some of the ideas he had is to, again, completely change it from the way that I have it, but maybe use the table, maybe using 2 people, and a bunch of different things. So basically, go off and work on this if you enjoy it, and don't be afraid to get creative with it, and just know that I've explored certain ways of doing this, like using the table and dealing them out, but it's just, there's certain points that like, it can't be too boring, it can't be, for me anyway, it can't be too long. It has to feel realistic. It can't just be about a showman piece of my skill. It has to feel sloppy, but not like a slop shop, but it has to feel like I'm not doing anything, quite sloppy. I put like a sloppy pharaoh and say, in fact, you shuffle, and it has to have all these beats, these moments. And as I always say, the magic really is in the details, the nuances, the little subtleties and convincers. That's what makes magic, as opposed to just having a cool method. And so that's my triumph. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because I've never taught this before. This is exclusive for the membership, as with everything else on here, and I'm really excited to finally share it with you all.